This is the Sony A1 Mark II, arguably the best all-around full-frame camera in the market, hands down, as of the end of 2024 and possibly 2025. But at what price? Let's talk about that right now. Big thanks to Sony Singapore for loaning me the camera. I literally have had less than 24 hours, so I use Sony cameras quite extensively, A9 III, A7 R5, respectively. And it is a combination of both of those cameras in this. Now, when I reviewed the A1 back a number of years ago when I was with Tech 360, I love that camera. Price point was out of my league, over $8,000 Singapore dollars. So it was never something that I could see myself getting into just for the affordability aspect of it. But there were things that I felt the Alpha 1, as great of a camera as it is, and how it did change the full frame market completely. I mean, nobody had 50 megapixels at 30 frames per second in RAW. High readout, I mean, minimum distortion, if any, fantastic autofocus, small compact body. Nobody had this kind of camera. The Alpha 1 set the benchmark. And then a couple of years later comes the A7 R5, which took that benchmark and elevated it even more. Better IBIS, better EVF, high resolution 60 megapixels. You're getting the flip out rotatable, fully articulating display on the back of it. You're getting all these great things in a camera. And the price point of it is fantastic, comparatively, right? Then the A9 III, I mean, the speeds, 24 megapixel global shutter, 120 frames per second. It's awesome. Some people complain about the ISO. In my previous video, I talked about it. It's not a big deal, but very good video out of it as well. It's an awesome camera, but there is something to be said about that. Not many people nowadays in 2024 want to spend a lot of money on a 24 megapixel camera system. I think Canon's going to be seeing that with the R1, and Sony, I don't know how the A9 III is selling, but from what I hear on the streets, some people prefer a higher megapixel, sensor. Fair enough, I get that. This hits the sweet spot. 50 megapixels, still 30 frames per second, but they've improved it. Better autofocusing. You've now got the autofocusing of the A9 III and the A7 R5 inside of this. You got pre-capture now, up to 1 second. I mean, you got a variety of pre-capture settings inside of this. 8.5 steps in the center of the frame, 7 steps around the peripherals of the frame. I mean, so much better than the Alpha 1. And the A9 III body, which is a fantastic body to hold, mind you, right? Because A is more curved, it feels solid in the hands, but it's also better for heat dissipation because the Alpha 1 tended to overheat quite extensively. 4K, 8K, especially where I live in Singapore, it didn't last long. And I talked to a lot of professionals out there. They had to move on to the A7S III for that reason. Now with this new body, I bet you heat management has improved on this a lot, which I'm excited to try out on this. You got all the ports you want, full-size HDMI and USB-C and Ethernet, everything that you would need to be a professional photographer in the field, but also use this in studio and the video up to 8K 30, 4K 120, 10% crop. That's it. Everything else, you're golden. 10-bit 422, you got S-Log 3 in this, you got S-Cinetone. You are stacked with a fantastic video camera. Dynamic stabilization as well on top of that. And they have the active framing like we saw in the ZVE1, where you can move around in the frame, now at a higher resolution. So you're not gonna get so much pixelization when you're cropping in. You're not gonna be wanting for anything. That's the beauty of the A1 Mark II, but at what price? I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, and the reason I say that is this. When the A1 came out, back in 2019 was it? Obviously it set a benchmark. Nobody's seen this kind of performance out of a camera before, but it came at a price point. It was around 6,000 plus USD, right? A lot of money for a full frame camera. And Canon had the R5, later on Nikon came out with the Z8 and Z9 respectively. So I don't know the price at the time of this recording of this video, but we'll know of it when it's released. But let's just use this for example. If it's the same price as the Alpha 1, would you, if you haven't decided what system you want to go into yet, would you go for an A1 Mark II? Or would you go for an R5 Mark II, which is 4,000 plus USD, which has a lot of the same or similar specs as this now, but saving almost $2,000? Or would you go for a Z8? Well, not 100% of the same specs, maybe 85, 87, 90% respectively of the same specs for almost half the price. And that's where it's gonna be interesting to see how Sony puts this out there. Again, I love this camera. I've used it over 24 hours, again, but I've used A7 R5, A9 III extensively. I'm familiar with Sony systems. I can tell you right now, this is a phenomenal camera system. The autofocusing, the new algorithm, what we got, like I mentioned before, it's all there. The EVF 9.44 million dot, 240 FPS, 120 FPS, the better eye cup on this, which is fantastic. It isolates the light outside of it. There's so many upgrades to this camera, small upgrades and also substantial upgrades. I'm not wanting for anything more out of a camera, out of a full frame camera. I'm not. But with the competition out there, can Sony maintain that price level for the A1 and now A1 Mark II? That's the question I have. And I'd love to hear from you guys on this as well. What do you think? Anyway, again, this is more of a kind of a talking head video because I wasn't able to shoot too much photos out of it, but I will be testing this camera extensively. Wildlife, sports, I will be pushing it, video as well. But man, Sony has created the best, in my personal opinion, high resolution hybrid camera in the market as of 2024 and arguably 2025. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on the A1 Mark II. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I will be doing follow-up videos, by the way. So with that, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Greatly appreciate the support, and I'll chat to you all very, very soon. Take care.